Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm gonna give this little streamer thing a chance. There we go. And now we're officially live. I'm guessing. And how come? Huh? The sound doesn't seem like it's synced with my mouth. My mouth. All right, that is what it is, right? All right, welcome everybody to Beehive Productions Horror Hump Days, where I read you a chapter or a short story from some of my writings. Lately, we have been reading from my book Sleepwalker, which is this book right here. And what this book is about a couple of guys go hunting, and they go into these mystical woods called the Wendigo Woods. And hey, good evening. Happy No Sleep Wednesday and Thanksgiving Eve, Kevin. Good to see you, buddy. What are you and Kate doing for Turkey Day? You guys got any plans? Are the kids coming down to see you? Or what you going to do? Is it just going to be a quiet little Kevin Kate night? So I know my dad wants me to come down for Christmas. Him and my stepmom have been kind of hinting around that they want me to come down. So looks like I may be going down there for Christmas, bud. So I don't know if I'm going to be around when you're here. So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully I'll be in your world and you'll be up in my world. So anyhow, yeah, getting back to Horror Hump Days. Sitting home alone with the hounds, and you're cooking. Oh boy! Hey Shannon, happy Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving Eve. So good to see you, buddy. Are you gonna be sticking around town as well, Shannon? Yes. Well, you just suck. I know, right? We're just not meant to see each other ever again, Kev. I guess that's the way it is. So maybe I will have to mail you your book. So anyhow, yeah, so we're here on a Wednesday, and we're reading about Bo BroadMeadow and his buddy, Jeff Eastman. And Bo BroadMeadow has been falling through little rifts of time-space, and he has tussled with the Wendigo, and then he moved over to to a pandemic. And now he finds himself in the pioneer days of the Minnesota territories. In tonight's story, Eva, which is chapter, let me see this here. Oh, okay. Chapter 1, 2, 3. Chapter 4. Heading north for a day to in-laws and then back home. Oh, that's always fun when you get to travel. Hopefully you don't get any snow. That always sucks traveling for the holidays in that crap. So, yes. So we're on chapter 4 of Sleepwalkers, and yeah, I'm going to have decided that after we're done with Sleepwalkers, I'm going to start reading from the new book, Thin Spots. This one here. It's plenty thick, so I think we'll be busy for a while. I've actually got to sign a copy because I sold one to a friend of mine. So I have to bring that down to him after this. Anyhow, if you're looking for gifts for your friends and family, your loved ones, and they are interested in horror, go to Amazon and check out my site on there. Just look up my name, Bradley Bodeker, and my book should pop up on there. So, and if you have any problems, just let me know, and I can get them ordered for you as well. So, That being said, I think we should head into tonight's chapter, Eva. All right. Let's see. Where are we? Do. Here we go. Here I am just sucking, Kevin. All right. Eva. Bo awoke with a large amount of phlegm coming up from his lungs. He was in a bed made of straw and covered in a hand-stitched quilt. Beside him was a tin spittoon. So he spat the globule of mucus into it. He searched his arms and chest looking for... What was it that he was looking for? His chest was bandaged with a cotton gauze pad that had leaked through. He couldn't recall what had happened. He knew neither the time nor the date. The word soldiers danced in his head and then floated into the distance. Somehow, the mossy, earthy scent in his nose attached itself to the memory he was holding onto. Was it a dream? Possibly. But looking around the dimly lit room, he could tell that he was in a sod dugout. The floor was dirt, as well as the back wall. The rest of the walls and ceiling were stacked piles of sod. There was a cook stove on one end with a stovepipe leading outside. A small wooden table sat in the middle of the room, and a fireplace made from mud bricks crackled with embers. There was no sound around. Was this his home? His mind said it wasn't. There was nothing familiar to this one-room home at all. There was a single wooden door opposite of him. A dim pinkish light snuck through the cracks of the planks. It was either dawn or dusk, he thought. The door wiggled, and with a rattle it opened, and a woman stood before him. She wore a long leather duster over a pair of tan corduroys and a white button-up shirt. She had on a wide-brimmed Stetson with a bandana over her mouth and nose. "My goodness," she said. Her voice was light and sing-songy. "You're awake." She hung up her coat and laid her hat on the edge of one of the chairs. Her hair spilled in waves of brown to her shoulders, and when she removed the bandana, he could see a bright smile. She sat by the bedside, and her eyes were a deep brown with a hint of dark red. He had never seen that color before. She produced a wet rag and patted his forehead with it. "Those Union soldiers left you for dead," she said softly. "With all of them rumors going around about the Indians spreading that virus around, you were the unlucky one to get caught up in all that." "Where am I?" Bo said uneasily. "You do speak English." "Well, sir, you're in Kelso Township proper. I found you on the trail I was coming from New Ulm. What tribe are you from?" "Ojibwe. I must get back to my people." "You're in no shape to go anywhere right now. Do you have a name?" "BroadMeadow." "Very well, BroadMeadow. Why don't we take a look at your wounds?" Her fingers worked gently, untying the bandages she had wrapped around his torso. As the pressure relieved on his wound, he could feel the blood pump to it, and it began to ache. "Easy now," she said softly. "I was able to dig out the ball bearings they had in you. Unfortunately, it didn't go all the way through, but your wound seems to be healing up nicely." With the same care she unwrapped the wound. She used a fresh rag to clean up the holes and apply a new bandage to it. When she knotted the bandage to it, the pain lessened, and he felt a little better. Hello from the McLeod County Fairgrounds. Hello, Bobby. Welcome, welcome, buddy. What do I call you? He asked. My name is Eva, she said gently. Take a sip of this. It's whiskey. It'll help with the pain and help you rest. Bo took a swig from the bottle. It burned as it went down his throat. There you go, she whispered. Now lie back and relax. She stroked his black hair, and he began to feel sleepy. He closed his eyes and listened to her voice as she massaged his temples. Try to think of happy things, she cooed. Think of the prairie and how the wind blows the long blades of grass like waves on a lake. He pictured her eyes as if they were deep burgundy pools, and they got wider. He was immersed in them, and he could feel himself sink into darkness. He began to dream. He was lying in the tall prairie grass. The stars above were flowing as if in a river. They were flowing in a spiral into some unknown blackness. What do you see? There was an old man, a shaman, sitting facing him. Hey, Jessica. What? Bo sat up suddenly. Don't lose your focus. Lie back down and tell me what you see. Bo laid his head down into a bed of grass that felt like a large puff of cotton. Above him, the river of stars flowed into the black, oily center. The horizon line was a deep purple. Do you feel like you belong here? The shaman asked. What do you mean? Bo was confused. Of course I belong here. This is my mind. But soon it won't be. What do you mean by that? The sky has stars now, but where are they all going? They're going into... This isn't where you're supposed to be. Are you saying I don't belong in my own mind? Did you awake in the same place that you fell asleep? Bo started to ponder that question, because he was having doubts. He felt as if he had been dreaming a whole entire other life, and then woke up into something unfamiliar. There are places we hold sacred. Bo concentrated on the blackness that all the stars were flowing into. It looked as if it were pulsing. There are places that are dangerous and thin. Sometimes things from somewhere else cross over here, and sometimes things from over here cross over there. He began to see the stars drain from the sky, and soon trees and grass flowed up and spiraled into the blackness. He began to feel himself lift from the ground. Grabbing the tall grass around him, a bunch tore from the earth in disintegrating clods of dirt. His body spiraled away from the ground, facing the coming blackness. He tried to stare deep into its depths. He woke, and it was mid-morning. He could tell by the way the sun shined outside through the wooden plank door. Eva was nowhere to be found. He called to her a few times. And when he received no answer, he lifted himself off the straw bed. His head began to swim, and his knees gave out. He was able to catch himself on the wooden table, and he held himself until the dizziness went away. On the table was a loaf of homemade bread, some jam, and churned butter with a jug of milk. Bo was famished, and he tore a hunk of bread off and began ripping chunks of it off with his teeth and eating it. He decided to take a knife and butter a hunk of bread and place some strawberry jam on it. After finishing the whole entire loaf, Bo poured the pitcher of milk down his throat. Milk leaked down the sides of his mouth and made its way down his neck onto his shoulders. Having satisfied the hunger in him, he found his moccasins by the door and slipped them on. He lifted the flimsy door and walked out into the sunshine. It had been several days since his skin had felt the sun touch it, so when it did, it began to burn a little. He did only have a loincloth on and a belt that held a scabbard for a knife. He went back inside and grabbed Eva's duster and put it on. He thought it odd that she had taken it off, but was absent. He stepped back outside. Prairie surrounded him on all sides. Attached to the house was fencing for horses and a dairy cow. Chickens ran amok by his feet. This territory was new to him. He did not recognize any landmarks, and he was a little disorientated. He walked the property as the horses followed him in his tracks. A creek flowed around the acreage and was teeming with trout. It was a beautiful piece of land. He almost felt at home in it. Perhaps part of him did belong here. His people were nomads and were on the move depending on the season. He got the idea to try and spear for the trout. He found a long stick, and he used a nearby jagged stone he found on the sandy bank of the creek to sharpen the tip. With his labor done, he waded into the water and was able to spear a few large trout. He brought them back to the sod home and began to clean them on the table that sat just outside the home. "BroadMeadow," came a soft female voice from inside. He almost jumped out of his skin. "Who's there?" he asked. "It's me, silly. It's Eva." "Oh, my apologies. I did not know you had returned home." "I was asleep. I was afraid you had left without saying goodbye." He thought about how nice it was to be missed by such a beautiful woman. A small smile formed on his brown lips. "I took a walk. I had to get some air. Brought home some fish." "How delightful." He brought in the fish, void of their scales and entrails, and laid them near the wood stove. "I thought I should repay you for your kindness," he said, putting a chunk of lard into a cast-iron skillet. "There's no need for that," she says, walking up to him. "I always try to help those in need, especially those with special needs." "I hope you like fish." "I'm not a big fish eater, sadly, but you go ahead and make yourself some." "Are you sure? What are you going to eat?" "I'll eat later, but thank you for being so generous." "My wound is almost healed. How long have I been out?" 8 days. You were unconscious after I found you. Let's take a look at your wound, shall we?" Bo laid the fish in the pan, and they began to sizzle. He sat down on the chair, and she unwrapped his dressing. The wound was smaller now. Dry crusts of blood were scabbed inside it. It was no longer sore when he moved about, but he flinched when she touched it. "Shh," she calmed. "Must keep the blood flowing as it cleanses the wound." She scraped away the scabs, and it began to bleed again. Her eyes seemed to turn a darker red. She licked her lips and pressed a wet cloth over the wound. "You have beautiful horses," he said nervously. She was very close to him, and it made him anxious. "Thank you. I'm a bit of a horse lover. They can make one feel so free when riding them. Perhaps you'd like to ride with me later." "I would like that." He stood up to flip the fish. She took the blood-soaked rag and wrung it out into a medium-sized bowl. She dipped it into another bowl filled with water, and she walked up behind him and wrapped her arm around his front and pressed the wet cloth roughly against his wound. He uttered a slight moan. When his fish were done, he sat down at the table to enjoy them. Eva sat across from him, never losing eye contact with him, and always with a soft smile on her lips. "Tell me about you, BroadMeadow," she asked. "What's your story?" Bo became alarmed. Although he knew he had a story, after he awoke, he didn't remember what that story was. He had dreams, vivid dreams of living another life, dreams he did not understand. Who is Jeff and Will? He thought to himself. These are white man names, but they seem so familiar. He could see what looked like a deer in the shadows of his memories. It was walking closer to him. He could remember feeling an icy chill crawl up his spine as the deer got closer. It made a noise that he wasn't familiar with, like a mewling noise that an animal makes when struck with a spear. Like a rabbit in its death throes, the deer got closer and closer, and he thought he would go mad if it got any closer to him. It wasn't a deer. It was a Wendigo. He shivered. Did I see a Wendigo? He also remembers driving a horseless carriage. It roared and bucked as if moving by magic somehow. BroadMeadow, she says, pulling him from the murk of his memories. Are you okay? What? He was back in the here and now, and those memories were fading fast. Yes, sorry. You were asking me? I was asking you about your story. Who are you, or were you, before I came upon you? Since the military kicked most of the Indians out of this area, I was a little shocked to find you here. My people are nomads, he said. We heard of the fighting between the whites of this area and the Lakota. I was scouting as we had heard the fort had been abandoned and the military moved on. We were hoping to profit from what the Lakota left behind. Then you were shot? Yes, by soldiers, I believe. Hey, Chuck's got the badgers and the bees with. Good evening, Chuck. Well, there hasn't been any military presence in this area for a couple of years. The military abandoned Fort Ridgely, and it's been squandered by the locals. May have been the militia in these parts. There's news of a plague going around the settlements. Most think it's the Indians spreading it. Bo looked down at his arms and remembers something about a virus growing from his arms and into his mouth. Are you okay? She asked. I think I should lie down for a bit, he answered. He lay down in his bed, and she sat at the head of the bed while his head rested in her lap. She massaged his temples again, and he began to fall asleep, drifting in and out as Eva began to tell her story. I am Jumlin, she said in a faraway voice. We too were nomads. We have traveled all across Turtle Island. Jumlin? Bo said. I've never heard of them. Nor would you. We're an ancient tribe that died out long before the Lakota Nation and the Ojibwe moved in from the Great Bridge. Your skin is so pale, like the whites. It's part of what makes us who we are. There are only a few of us left. How did your people die out? The First Nations of Turtle Island feared us and gathered their parties and slayed every man, woman, and child they could. A few survived, but only a few. She began to tell more, but he was drifting in and out of sleep. At one point, he thought he had seen her drinking from the bowl she had wrung his blood out into. But sleep was a heavy blanket that didn't allow him to awaken. He awoke in the evening. The smell of chicken frying on the wood stove still filled his nose, and he awoke with a smile. He felt weak and a little dizzy. "Oh, good. You're awake," Eva said from the stove. "I hope you're hungry." "I am," he said, and tried to stand, and wobbled back down again on the bed. "Take it easy. Your body is still healing. Go slow." He slowly lifted himself from the bed. His head swam for a bit, but then cleared and he stood up, feeling better. He walked his way slowly to the table and sat down. I'm really sorry for falling asleep during your story," he said. "That's okay," she said. "It's a morbid tale and maybe a little fanciful too." She put the chicken down and began to eat, as if he hadn't eaten in days. "Aren't you going to eat?" he asked. "I already ate, thank you," she said. He remembered the vision of her drinking from the bowl of his blood. Was that a dream? He wondered. Of course it is. What are you thinking? He finished his plate and drank down some coffee she had made. It was warm and bitter with a hint of honey towards the end of the cup. "Are you ready to go riding?" she asked. "At night?" He looked dumbfounded. "I love riding at night. The stars are out and the moon is full. We'll have plenty of light." He shrugged and decided to go. It was a beautiful night for riding. The prairie was lit up by the night sky. A gossamer scarf draped the landscape with dimly lit terrain. The horses knew the land and mostly did the steering as Bo felt the night air breeze past his face. He could see the moon glisten in the creek as the frogs croaked in chorus with the crickets of the prairie. Eva had looked so natural and so beautiful upon her horse that his heart began to melt with such emotion for her. They galloped side by side into the night, not saying a word to one another, and yet glancing once in a while at each other. Her eyes looked black as midnight, and he thought that he may drown in them. Their ride was interrupted by an arrow burying itself into the neck of Eva's horse. It cried out in a gurgling whine, and then fell ass over tea kettle, launching her into the air and slammed her into a tree. Bo pulled back on the reins of his horse and looked behind him. He could see no one. He jumped off his horse and ran to find Eva. "BroadMeadow!" a man's voice called out. He stopped dead in his tracks. "Who knows me by name?" he asked out loud. "Do you not know the voice of your people?" "My people?" Several men came out of hiding, painted black like the night. He recognized them as fellow tribesmen. "We have been searching for you for 2 days now," the first man spoke. "What have you done to my friend?" He was upset and concerned for Eva's well-being. "That thing is not your friend, BroadMeadow. She is a Jumlin." "I know, but she's still my friend. She saved me when the whites shot me." "She was probably feeding on you." "Feeding on me? Listen to yourselves. You're speaking foolishly." "Don't let them kill me, BroadMeadow," Eva called from somewhere in the dark. "Eva, are you okay?" I am wounded. I cannot defend myself. I don't know if I can walk." "She lies," his tribemen say, holding his tomahawk behind his right ear. "She is a demon, brother. We're here to rescue you." "Stay back," Bo said, a bit confused. There's no need to harm her. She's defenseless. Maybe you have her mixed up with someone else. You should come back with us. This land is poisoned. Poisoned by her kind.
Please, BroadMeadow, she cried. I would never hurt you. Don't let them get me.
Brother, Bo said, put down your axe and go back to camp. Let me take my friend home in peace, and then I will join you when I know she's okay. She has you under her spell. Join us in the hunt.
I can't.
Something came out of the darkness. It leaped through the air and onto the first brave with the tomahawk. He heard the ripping of flesh and a low growling noise, and then a flash of something. And then his fellow tribesmen were beginning to fall, some so fast they were barely able to cry out. He hopped on his horse and rode off back to Eva's sod home. He pulled the rickety door closed and pushed the table in front of it. He backed his way to the far end of the home and waited. Waited for some unknown horror to follow him through the door, tossing aside the door and table and then ripping him apart with razor-sharp claws and jagged fangs. But that never came. What came was the soft, sing-songy voice of Eva. She sounded as if she had been badly hurt.
Help me, she said. Please, help me.
Eva, Bo said hesitantly. Is that you?
Yes, please. I need help.
Hesitantly, Bo began to move the table away from the door. He pulled the rickety door open and saw Eva, leaning on the fence, gasping. He picked her up and carried her into the house and laid her upon the straw bed. Her face was covered in blood, and her hair was matted with it. There was a deep gash in her skull, where he could see her broken skull and parts of her brain matter. There were several arrows in her back, and by the sound of her breath, one of those arrows were in her lung. Her clothes were also drenched in crimson, but was slowly drying into a hard crust.
Eva,
Bo spoke to her softly.
Tell me what my people said out there. Was it true? There's no time, she said, still gasping. I need you now.
Tell me! She spoke between gasps, with bubbles of gore popping from her mouth.
I am Jumlin. Our ancestor was an old shaman who cursed the great creator for not blessing him with children. So he dabbled in the dark magic. His spirit was filled with darkness, and he craved the blood of the living. For many years he fed upon other tribes and impregnated other women. His progeny were like him and spread the thirst to others. We called ourselves the Jumlin.
With that, she pulled away his bandage and scratched away the scab of his wound, and as blood began to pour from it, she licked it greedily and then started to suck it out as it slowed. Bo felt himself begin to slip away.
Eva,
he gasped.
Please,
She kept draining the blood from his wound like someone who hadn't eaten for weeks. He tried to pull her off, but she had clung tightly to him. He was trapped, and with each swallow, he felt weaker.
I was healing you, she said, regaining her strength. He noticed that the gash in her skull had cleared up. I only took little sips from you. Our kiss has properties that heal. I did all that while you slept. Are you going to drain me completely? That was never my plan. I'm lonely. I thought when you grew to love me, maybe you would want to stay. I would only feed on you enough so that you'd stay alive and keep me satiated. You've killed my people. They killed my horse, and they were trying to kill me. You must make a choice, BroadMeadow, but choose carefully. I cannot leave you with this knowledge if you choose not to stay. The door crashed open and splintered. The shaman from his tribe came in with one of the surviving braves. Get back, demon! The shaman screamed, holding a talisman in the air. I'm sorry, BroadMeadow, she said softly. What are you? Bo's question was cut off. Eva hissed, and fangs protruded from her gums. She bit down into his neck and began to drain him. He felt them stab into his flesh, and he cried out. He could feel his life leave him. His shaman, shouting curses at her as she fed on him, her lips sucking while her tongue lapped at his essence flowing rapidly from his neck. Go back, demon! Go back to whatever hell you came from! Oh, great Creator, save our brave warrior from the clutches of death! Save him from crossing over! Am I dreaming again? Which dream is this? Or is this my real life? His thoughts raced as unconsciousness took him back to the ocean of prairie grass. The night sky swirling above him again. The sky was slowly turning white. Don't lose yourself, Sleepwalker, for in these thin places you may never come back. And that, my friends, is the end of Eva. And we will continue next week with chapter 5 called The Nest. So, anyhow, thank you guys very much for joining me. And as always, I usually kind of like to talk about the creation of the story. This one was actually, I wanted to write a vampire story, but I wanted it in the Old West. And I thought, well, I'm always writing, my books are all usually always based in Minnesota. So I said, well, it's got to be about the old Midwest. And I was looking up legends, and I found one regarding vampires in Native American lore. And that one was the Jumlin. And that, I believe, is Cherokee. It's a Cherokee legend regarding that. And I was kind of doing some research on the vampire myth, and there's actually a ton of vampiric characters all over the world. And some of the earliest are back in Babylonian times and Assyrian times. So another good one. Thanks. You are very welcome, Shannon. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Damn it, man. Poppy. I'm glad you guys liked it. Yeah, so when I finished this one, then I was like, I really got to kind of go into a big kind of where did all this come from. So that's when I wrote the pale ones for my book, Thin Spots. Yeah, I went more in depth with them, and actually the pale ones in that book is kind of a prequel and kind of how Eva came about. So I don't know. We'll read the pale ones again. Like I said, when I read thin spots. Um, so yeah, your thin spots has kind of been kind of an ongoing theme for me, and if you have read Pavor Nocturnus, which was last year's, was that last year's? Yeah, I think that was last year's horror anthology, Pavor Nocturnus, and that was kind of regarding thin spots and nightmares. So, it's great listening to Story Hour. Good. I'm glad you guys. I'm really happy that you guys joined me on these nights. It's fun to tell you guys my stories, and I kind of get a live feed of reactions as far as whether you like these stories or not. So I'm doing my job. I hope. So anyhow, so yeah, there's a lot of lore with thin spots. So eventually, I'm going to write a book that is going to kind of tie thin spots, sleepwalkers, and Pavor Nocturnus, and it's going to tie all of them together, and it's going to be called The Land of Nod, and that is going to be a novel. When I'm going to find time to write that, I have no idea, but it's going to be something. It's going to be somewhere. But yeah, we'll have that ready for you guys someday if I live that long. So I think what I have to do is I have to sell a bestseller so then I can quit my day job and just be a writer. That would be awesome. So anyhow, I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. I myself, every year, I used to celebrate Thanksgiving with my buddy Pimo, Joe, and his family. They would invite me over, and I would eat with his family, and then the bar that he owned closed, and he started having Thanksgiving with his kids. And so my good friend Matthew, who thankfully lived through a horrible motorcycle accident, him and his wife Wanda have invited me every year hence to their place for Friendsgiving. And it's a good time. Matthew smokes a great brisket, and so I look forward to eating that. And his family's really great too. I like hanging out with him and seeing him every year. So yes, I got that to look forward to, and it's just several blocks away from my house, so I don't have to travel too far. So you guys all have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy yourselves. Friday, I'm going to be playing some music with Bobby at his little Christmas gig. He got me to sing a Christmas carol. So I don't know. We might video it. We're going to try to video it. And yeah. And then Saturday, we'll be doing that. Bobby is going to sing a Christmas song. Surprise, surprise, right? But yeah, he's going to be doing one too on Saturday. So if you're in the Hutchinson area, stop on out there at the Hutchinson Fairgrounds. They have old time Christmas village they're building out there. It's part of the Lions Club, which Bobby and his wife are part of. So head on out there and check that out for some Christmas feels. I'm gonna be so out of my element when I go out there. Bobby, you're gonna need to hold my hand because holy shit. It's like me walking into a church kind of. Yeah, I'm gonna probably ignite. So I'm sure it'll be good. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know about some of these friends of mine here that are trying to get me to enjoy Christmas. I don't know. So anyhow, thank you guys again. Join us next week for Tunes for Tuesday. I haven't gotten anything picked out yet, but I'm sure it'll be something that you can either laugh at or enjoy. And join me next Wednesday for Horror Hump Days when we're going to be reading The Nest. So yeah, we got that going on. So have a great Thanksgiving. Everybody drive safe.
If you got to travel, have fun with friends and family, make memories. Because, damn it, that's all we got in the end, our memories. And I, for one, am very thankful to all of you guys tuning into this little makeshift live stream / podcast thing. You make me feel a little bit important. So, and that's great. And you make it seem worthwhile to write these stories and to play some of these songs for you guys. So, yeah, you're great friends, and I very much appreciate you. So thank you, Kevin, and Jessica, and Bobby, and I don't know if Steph's listening. She's off with her daughter. Yeah. So thank you guys. Thank you guys very much for coming out, and I hope you have a great holiday and a great weekend. Love you. Peace. And I am out. I've wasted enough of your time. Yes.